Time to update our rest of season rankings at every single position. If you enjoy this video every week, please drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed as well because we're going to have this for you, like I said, every single week. And we're going to start with running back here. The S tier has changed a little bit. Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey obviously stay the same. But Jonathan Taylor at this point is my running back 2 in fantasy football. When you're looking at him so far this season, he is the number 1 overall running back in terms of production. He's the number 2 overall player in terms of production. 12, 29, and 32 points. He's getting every valuable touch there. 25, 17 attempts in his last couple games. Didn't even have a rushing touchdown until Tennessee and had 3 of them. The schedule, Los Angeles is going to be tough, but Vegas, Arizona, the Chargers, Tennessee, mixed bag there in terms of difficulty. But Jonathan Taylor looks like one of the best picks in fantasy football, getting him in the second round, and he is a surefire S-tier running back rest of the season for us. He's my running back too, and again, you can put him anywhere in this S-tier. I'd be totally good with it. He's probably the only change in the S-tier that we'll have for a while.
So in the A tier, you've got a new guy that I think does belong there at this point with Derrick Henry. He's still going to be fine. His floor is still super high with the exception of the Cleveland game where you saw even Josh Jacobs struggle to get production there in that game this last week. Even in a game where he wasn't able to punch it in the end zone like 2 or 3 times with the goal line opportunities there, he's still getting those goal line opportunities. I wouldn't worry too much about the fumbles. They're kind of volatile. And again, in a tough game against Detroit, he still had like 10 to 12 points. So he's going to be fine. But again, the rest of these guys here, we're all pretty much on the same page with Devon Achane, Josh Jacobs, James Cook are all looking really, really solid as bell cows in their respective offenses. Omarion Hampton is the new guy that is now in the A tier here, and I think deservedly so. This has been a big flip from what we saw even just last week with Najee Harris taking away from Hampton. Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh have no choice but to give Omarion Hampton all the carries there now, which he deserves, by the way, and deserved even when Najee Harris was healthy. It was absolutely ridiculous that they were like just trying to lose with a less good running back in the backfield there. So now Hampton will actually help them win games, and they'll continue to be dominant, and he'll continue to excel in a Greg Roman offense. Yeah,
you've got Bucky Irving in that A tier as well still. In the B tier, we'll start with Kyren. Look, Kyren's been fine. I don't understand. There's kind of Kyren is a guy that just, I think, gets perpetually faded by everybody. 13 and 10 points in his first couple weeks were pedestrian, and everybody was worried about the usage. But even in a game here where when you're talking about Blake Corum, he is still getting more snaps and more carries. The most carries this year for Blake Corum, 8 carries. And what we saw is it doesn't matter for Kyren. Kyren had not only a receiving touchdown here, he should have had a rushing touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown, and it got called back because of a penalty. And so he had 19 points. He could have had 25 points. And again, that's on Blake Corum's highest attempts of the season. And so what this should tell you is even with Blake Corum cutting into his work a little bit, Kyren's still going to be very productive. The Rams look like one of the best teams in the NFL right now, and that also makes a difference. You should rank Kyren aggressively. Alvin Kamara has been a little bit disappointing the last couple weeks, but we're still going to rank him aggressively because we know what he is capable of. 13, 16, and then 6 points. The problem there is the touchdowns are going to be very hard to come by. It's the problem for every receiver, tight end, and running back in the New Orleans Saints offense, and that's really why Kamara, you have to be a little bit conservative ranking him rest of the season, and so he's going to remain here in this tier. Ashton Genty has moved down in both of our rankings, and really, I think until Genty has his breakout moment, which he will, by the way, he will have his breakout moment. We just don't know if that's going to come in 2 weeks or if it's going to come in 6 weeks. And so rest of the season, we have to be pretty conservative, but we put him in this B tier. And once he does the Hampton thing and he breaks out, then we're going to be totally fine ranking Genty higher than this. But right now, I mean, he's the running back 33 on the year. He's had 12, 7, and 6 points so far. His snap share has gone down since week 1. His attempts have stayed the same, but he still hasn't gotten in the end zone since his first game in the NFL. And so we do have to be a little bit conservative ranking him. Breece Hall, he's fallen back down to earth. I do think Breece at times still has looked good, but the situation there, it's a combination of the situation there and the fact that Breece right now, 9 points on 55% snap share, only had 9 attempts, only had 9 rushing attempts, still did have 6 targets, so it's going to elevate his floor, which I think you saw his floor in week 3, but still, the production has to follow with Breece Hall, and we just straight up haven't seen that yet, and so he's going to be here. Chuba Hubbard, kind of a slow week for Chuba. We talked about him in our Panics video. We're obviously not super concerned there. Javonte Williams remains in this tier, as he should. Kenneth Walker is in this tier. We have Kenneth Walker between the two of us, I think, as our running back 19 now. Walker had 2 touchdowns. What's funny about Kenneth Walker is when you're looking at his actual stats, 16 attempts for 38 yards, 2.38 yards per carry against New Orleans of all teams. Not good at all. But he had 2 touchdowns. And he only had 16 attempts. He only played 53% of snaps without Charbonnet. but it still does, you still have to start Kenneth Walker at the moment. And so he should be ranked as a mid-range running back too, in my opinion. That's probably where he deserves to be right here. And then Quinshon Judkins. He announced my guy moving up. I'm going to announce his guy moving up. B tier for Quinshon. Quinshon against the best defense, probably the second best defense, it's the Browns and then the Packers, against the second best defense in the NFL. In his second game, with 5 practices under his belt, 55% snap share, 18 attempts for 94 yards and a touchdown. I mean, just straight up looked amazing. Like, he is an NFL-ready running back, and they drafted him in the second round. Expect him to continue to get more opportunity there. They're going to give Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson receiving reps, which is fine. He's going to get every valuable carry and touch in that offense, and that is why he's going to have to be ranked more aggressively for the rest of the season. He slides into this tier, and if you have Quinshon Judkins, depending on where you drafted him, obviously if you drafted him in the 5th, it's like, yeah, now he's performing how he should. But if you drafted him like the 8th, 9th, you're looking at a very good pick in fantasy football this year. He's going to be B tier. I don't think he's going anywhere rest of the season either. He looks to be the real deal in that Cleveland offense.
So C tier is going to be a little baby tier. We've got basically a bunch of guys that are a little bit more unknown over the course of the next few weeks, and then if they continue to show this consistency, they probably will belong in the B tier for the rest of the year as well. But Travis Etienne just continues to have Bashal Tutin kind of take away touchdown opportunity. Tutin had another touchdown against Houston in week 3, where, again, this offense just looks abysmal with Shane Waldron having his fingerprints all over it. It's disgusting, but his snap share went down. His opportunities and touches went down, and his production was cut in half. So we're not really that worried about Tutin. Etienne is the clear bell cow there, and I think he'll be fine. Trey Benson has moved up significantly in our boards. We actually both settled with him at running back 21, which I think is right where he belongs until he shows that he can produce at a high level, James Conner level, and then he'll move up as well. Cam Scattaboo, with Tyron Tracy going down for a few weeks, is awesome. Once Tyron Tracy comes back, we'll see how much they actually want to integrate him into that offense. So we might be a little more conservative with Scattaboo, like over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks until Tyron Tracy comes back, unless he keeps dropping 20 plus points, and then you'll just have to respect it, and he'll be the number 1 guy there, bell cow long term. Chase Brown is more of a faller here in this C tier. He, along with everybody in that offense, is really, really suffering from the just less efficient as a whole offense with no Joe Burrow for the rest of the season. So it's not looking good for Chase Brown, and honestly, he might be falling even more in future weeks.
Let's go to the D tier now. We're going to have Travion Henderson still up here. Henderson, after both Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson had fumble issues, took over that backfield in the 4th quarter. Henderson has done, in my opinion, nothing but look pretty good when he's on the field. I think people are sleeping on just how big of an impact he could have for your fantasy football team later in the season. He plays his highest snap shares of the season, only has 7 points, but obviously didn't get in the end zone. 3 receptions, had 11 attempts for 28 yards. Obviously, the efficiency is not good. It's more the involvement in the role. And once he starts getting those consistent reps, I do think he's going to, come into his own, similar to how we've seen with Judkins and Amarian Hampton. Jordan Mason, rest of the season, is in this D tier, and Jordan Mason, honestly, he could be a guy that you put in the C tier, and I'd be totally fine with it. We have him in this D tier right now, but Mason looked really, really, really good in his first game as the only starter there, because obviously you have Aaron Jones out, 23 points on 60% snap share. So snap share didn't really change, but he had 16 attempts and he got in the end zone twice. That was the big difference here. They're not going to play the Bengals every week, so I need to keep that in mind, but Mason looked really good. Tony Pollard continues to look about like Tony Pollard did. He had his best game of the year, in my opinion, which is, I put him as a guarantee last week because it's the Colts, and he did find the end zone. Still, 2.81 yards per carry for Tony Pollard. I mean, I just don't know what you do with that if you own Tony Pollard in fantasy football. It's just not good. J.K. Dobbins, another productive and another efficient game for J.K., although, again, what we find is the efficiency is going to be skewed by a big run that he had if you watch in that game. And so, R.J. Harvey continues to get a significant amount of snaps there, and they continue to uptick. But J.K. Dobbins is still getting the valuable ones and still scoring the touchdowns. And so until that changes, he's got to be the higher-ranked running back there in Denver. David Montgomery had a great game. How many points did he end up with last night? It was
29.
29. Yeah. He's the running back 8 on the season so far. Obviously, that's skewed by that one game, but he was great. Swifty had 10 points, so he's been low-end running back 2, which is what he literally has every year of his career, and so he's ranked for us as a low-end running back 2. And then Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren, Came back down to earth a little bit in this game, 13 points, but he's had 13, 17, and 13 points. He's the running back 14, very consistent so far, and also had 6 targets in this last game. And so you like to see the target utilization, the receiving utilization for Jaylen Warren, and he's definitely worth moving up above these guys that we have in the F tier. Some of these guys have fallen a little bit. We have questions about them, but all these guys in the D tier right now, you are looking to flex or start pretty much every week, and then it gets a little bit hairy once you get to the F tier.
Yeah, F tier, I'll start with a couple of guys. Krosky Merritt is... His coming out party is taking a lot longer than we expected or a lot of people expected. His snap share, not really pretty again this week. Technically, he was the number 1 there in terms of snap share, but Rodriguez actually got the nod in the opening drive, and he's been a healthy scratch for the last few weeks. So 40% snap share for Krosky Merritt, which was double what he got against Green Bay. Hopefully that can continue to go up, but he doesn't even look good with the opportunity that he's getting. He looks very inefficient like every other running back in that offense. Charbonnet, hopefully he can move up boards again when he's back healthy and actually be efficient with that opportunity as well. But with Walker looking really solid until Walker gets banged up or Walker doesn't get these touchdowns, we're probably talking about Charbonnet not really being startable. And then Tyron Tracy goes down with injury. He has to drop down a tier or 2 with Scadaboo already kind of taking away from his workload and establishing himself as a running back 1 there. And I think that's something you're going to see rest of the season. Tyron Tracy, even with the injury, might continue to move down these boards. Aaron Jones, injured. RJ Harvey, we already mentioned. A bunch of running back 2s here in the rest of the G tier. Ramondre, fumble issues. Bashal Tutin, limited snap share, even less than last week. Got salvages a day with a touchdown. Kareem Hunt just looks better than Isaiah Pacheco. And that running back room as a whole looks awful. Nick Chubb came back down to earth this week in a matchup against Jacksonville, which was expected. Then you got the G tier with a bunch of backups that are just, we're even less excited about anyone in the F tier and have less upside. Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, Spears, Sampson, Algier, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis, Jerome Ford, Dowdle, Corum, and B-Rob being the last guy backing this up. So...
All right, let's pivot over to wide receivers now. If you would like to see our rest season ranks as they get updated throughout the week in our weekly ranks, you can get that for free. You can also use our free My Teams tool over on the site and just plug in your team. You can kind of see where you rank rest of the season. Again, this is all free. You just have to create a free account with code DOMAIN. Use code DOMAIN when you sign up. I've got the link down in the comments again. You can access these free things. We're also doing team reviews and things like that over on the site. But there's plenty of free resources for you to use this fantasy football season if you would like to. And so again, check out the link down below to access all of that. Let's start with the S tier for wide receivers. Right now, it's Puka Nacua, it's Malik Neighbors, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Puka, we talked about putting him in a tier of his own, but realistically, like Neighbors and Amon-Ra St. Brown are on a different level than like the Chase, Jefferson, JSN, Lamb type tier that we have in the A tier here. And so Puka has continued his dominance here. I mean, he has looked absolutely ridiculous. He looks like the clear best fantasy football wide receiver. Malik Neighbors had a slow game against the Kansas City Chiefs. It was a tough matchup for Malik Neighbors, but we still expect him to do really good things this season, and he's getting a new quarterback this week, and so that's going to be something to monitor for next week as we decide, hey, how is this going to affect Malik Neighbors' season-long outlook with Jackson Dart at the helm? And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, another great game for Amon-Ra on Monday Night Football, and he has 20 points in this game. He has a touchdown. He's the wide receiver 2 so far in fantasy football, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is just so good at so many things on the football field, and it just translates in so many ways, including fantasy football points, and he's just so consistent. He's old, reliable. He is in a great offense, an offense that's going to score a lot of points, and Jared Goff loves him and trusts him, and that's what we care about as well. And so he's going to be in the S tier here. The A tier is where we have some movement this week, and that's going to be a little bit of a bigger tier here for wide receivers.
Yeah, so Jamar Chase will be at the top of this A tier. Again, we're both being pretty conservative with him at the moment, and honestly, he just by default moved up a spot this week because we had to move CeeDee Lamb down when he's expected to miss upwards of 4 weeks. And, oh, by the way, Justin Jefferson, who's also in this tier, is just not producing right now. So yeah, you basically have the same questions with Chase versus Jefferson at the moment, and who has the higher upside on a per game basis. It is Jamar Chase still. That is the reality, and we've seen that on display when he's been with Jake Browning on the field in the past. So JSN sandwiched between both of these guys, Chase and Jefferson, in this tier. I actually have JSN all the way up to wide receiver 4. Avery's got him at 8. Avery would be doing that based off of upside, which is not as high as some of the other guys above him. I'm ranking JSN based off of his floor. He's scored like 18 plus points every single week, and he had a 20-pointer with in the flu game where he literally was sick this week. So we love JSN this year in the A tier, deservedly so. CeeDee Lamb, we'll just move him up a spot literally every single week from here on out. You just have to account for the fact that he's missing significant time, which significantly impacts your fantasy team. So if you make a deal now, you're going to have to pay a cheaper price, or you're going to have have to offload him for a cheaper price as opposed to later when he comes back, and then he'll be priced right where he was previously. Rome Odunze and Nico Collins are going to be in this A tier as well. Nico kind of came back to earth, not came back to earth. He actually went off finally, which is what we wanted to see in a day that the offense was not productive. Stroud didn't look good, and he was still productive. He's the only guy there that's relevant. And Nico and Rome Odunze is just so consistent. Again, in another day where he doesn't go insane, he still has 15 points. So he's looking like he has one of the highest floors in the NFL right now for wide receivers.
It really is tough to rank this group of 20 wide receivers that follow here, but we're going to give it our best shot. I'll start with Drake London. I have Drake London ranked about 5 spots below Nathan now. London has just straight up this year, after the 15-target game in week 1, followed up with 4 and 8 targets. They just are not using him enough, in my opinion. I think they should use him more.
Fire their wide receiver coach?
Did they?
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so maybe that will make a difference. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
They're also bringing Zach Robinson down on the field because he's the OC there, and so he was up in the booth. So they're making changes. That's usually like a precursor to some other stuff that happens. Though just being honest.
Yep.
10 points for Drake London last week. He's wide receiver 44 in the season. We're being patient, trying to wait for him to kind of continue what he was building on with the target volume in week 1. But honestly, I've moved him down a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do anything next week if we both move him down a little bit, because at that point, it's going to start to be concerning. Garrett Wilson, let's talk about somebody who hasn't been concerning. Worse situation than Drake London for Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 7 on the year, 24 points against Tampa Bay with Tyrod Taylor throwing him the ball. Garrett Wilson is QB proof. Everybody said that Garrett Wilson was a bad pick. Everybody said that Garrett Wilson was going to be bad this year. He's going to be mid. Guys, Garrett Wilson's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. If you put Garrett Wilson on any other good team, Garrett Wilson's a top 3 wide receiver. 9
times out of 10, guys, talent transcends situation.
And that's what's happening here. Garrett Wilson's talent is transcending a bad situation. But again, I've said this with Garrett Wilson. I think that the coaching staff and the situation there organizationally is much better for Garrett Wilson than it has been. I think Aaron Glenn is a pretty decent upgrade at head coach for the New York Jets than what they've had. And so because of that, I think you are going to see competent play from quarterbacks, enough to support Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, again, a wide receiver 1, mid wide receiver 1 in the season. This is probably being conservative with where we could rank him. A.J. Brown finally had a good game. A.J. Brown, we were a little bit worried about him. And what this was the Eagles found themselves trailing, and so they had to pass the ball a little bit more. Jalen Hurts clearly wants to pass the ball more. I don't know if you listened to his post-game comments. He's like, the second half, we finally got to play football. We stopped playing not to lose and started playing to win.
Because they were down.
And they basically, and so I don't know. I do think what you've seen in the first couple weeks with Hurts' volume, I do think you're going to see it more average out to 25 to 30 attempts a game instead of more around 20. That would be my guess. And you saw that at times last year as well. But we'll see. With A.J. Brown, it is nice to see him have a good game. He has 22 points, 10 targets in this game. He obviously had a touchdown as well, and so he gets to kind of maintain his spot after we saw a slow start, but we're going to stay optimistic. Look, Brian Thomas Jr., I think we both have him ranked at 14, and I think this is the last week. 3 weeks, he salvaged his day with 1 catch here. He's had 9, 8, and 7 points. He's the wide receiver 54 on the year. A lot of people have already moved him down to the 20s. We're trying to be patient here, but realistically, it's getting hard. It's getting hard with Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah. And if we need to move him down after next week, he's probably going to fall back down into the C tier behind a lot of these guys. And so one last week, I think, of patience for Brian Thomas before we really move him down our rankings. Tet McMillan, I think Tet McMillan's been fine. Obviously, he hasn't necessarily had the points translate. 90% snaps, 8 targets, so he has 9, 10, and 8 targets. He only caught 3 of them, but I think if he continues to get the target volume, what you're seeing on tape with Tet as well is he's separating very well at the NFL level. I think the Panthers are very pleased, and I think you should be pleased with what we've seen so far from the rookie. It's just a matter of translating that to more fantasy points, and I think that will come. I think that's something he's going to do as well. Emeka Egbuka, straight up when you watch the guy, looks like the best wide receiver prospect maybe in this draft. And a much better situation than T-Mac, and he's outscoring T-Mac. If you want to rank him above T-Mac, again, we've got him in the same tier. Anybody in these tiers, you move around how you want to, and we're fine with it. But Egbuka undoubtedly has been one of the better rookies in the NFL, if not the best rookie. You have Mike Evans leaving with a hamstring injury. You've got Chris Godwin coming back, but he's going to be hobbled because he's coming off of a serious injury as well. And Egbuka continues, 8 targets in this game, caught 6 of them, didn't have a touchdown, and still had 15 points. Egbuka is, again, if you think, this is too low for Egbuka, well, put him at the top of the B tier, right behind Nico Collins, and we're cool with that. Again, move these guys around any way you want to in a tier, and we'll be fine with it. And then Courtland Sutton. Sutton, we told you, hey, Sutton's a buy. He's going to continue to get a ton of target volume. What you saw against Indy was a fluke. 23 points, 8 targets, 6 receptions, and a touchdown for Courtland Sutton. He looked really good in that game against Los Angeles. Sutton's a guy that I think for the rest of the year is going to be a high-end wide wide receiver 2 low and wide receiver 1 type guy. And because of that, we're going to keep ranking him aggressively here.
So in the C tier here, we got Devontae Adams at the top. He honestly just looks like the best possible pairing with Puka Nacua. They can both produce at the same time. He obviously has the lower floor because he's not getting as much volume consistently that Puka is. He's the number 2 there, and that's what you're getting for a C tier wide receiver. He also has incredible upside. Zay Flowers really came back to earth against Detroit. This is the Zay Flowers experience. You have 28-point games, and you have essentially goose eggs, and that's what you're going to get, I think, rest of the season with him, a mixed bag. Tyreek Hill just seems to have more of a cap ceiling than he used to. I feel like everybody was like, oh, he's either going to do absolutely nothing or he's going to do absolutely everything. What if he's just okay? Like, that's a possibility. I think Tyreek Hill in the C tier is very reasonable. Lad McConkey's been a big faller. He'll continue to fall if he does not produce in this offense. He's a number 1 there schematically, but QJ and Keenan Allen are just getting more opportunity in the red zone. They're scoring. They look more explosive. They're just better right now, so we have to admit that. Marvin Harrison Jr., another big faller right now. We both have him at wide receiver 21. If he doesn't figure it out and learn how to catch a football, he will also continue to fall. Jamison Williams and Rashee Rice will be backing up this tier. Rashee Rice I really want to highlight. He's just going to consistently move up our boards the closer he gets to returning, and he's moving up everybody's boards right now. I think everyone in the fantasy community knows how badly the Chiefs need Rashee and how much they're just going to pepper him with targets all day long once he's back.
All right, starting with the D tier here. Chris Olave continues to get a ton of targets in that offense. And like I said with Alvin Kamara in the running back section, the problem is Chris Olave can't score touchdowns because this team can't score touchdowns, but he's still the wide receiver 24 on the season so far. And so that's right where we have him ranked in our rankings. And, I think he's going to be a high target, high floor guy that you can rely on in your flex spot. You just maybe have a limited upside. But again, if he's scoring double digits every game, then who cares? We got George Pickens here. Pickens, we haven't moved up a ton. We moved him up a little bit. Obviously worth moving up a little bit. 2 17-point games with the exact same stat line both games, which is absolutely crazy, by the way, unless snaps slightly. But now you have no CD Lamb there. And so a lot of people are going to be looking at these rankings. Hey, how much do you move Pickens up? The problem is, we talked about this as well with our with one of our videos. I think it's buy, sell, hold. George Pickens, in our opinion, functions better as a 2 alongside CeeDee Lamb than he functions as a 1 in that offense. Sure, he's going to get the volume, but we've seen George Pickens as a 1 before, and it doesn't always necessarily translate to double-digit fantasy points every week. And so the team being a little bit of a mess right now. Dak obviously is still the best quarterback George Pickens has ever played with. We will be aggressive with George Pickens if he comes out and has like a pretty dominant week with a ton of target volume. But we have to see it first. I think a lot of people are going to move George Pickens too far up rankings. And if you do see that happening, maybe you can take advantage and sell George Pickens pretty high. I mean, again, if people start talking about him with the Nico, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Ted McMillan, Ibuka, Sutton range, like I think I would be moving off of him at that point. But regardless, we'll see what he does. He does move up in our rankings. Mike Evans is going to miss 2 to 3 weeks, so he's moved down quite a bit. We'll have to monitor that. Obviously, Ibuka stock up and Evans stock down. And you have Chris Godwin coming back very soon, which we'll talk about here in a second. Ricky Pearsall has another good game here. Ricky Pearsall so far this year, the wide receiver 16 on the year. 11 targets in this game with 117 yards. Still hasn't scored a touchdown. It's still the wide receiver 16. And so I do really like the floor that Ricky Pearsall offers here. And personally, I think I have Ricky Pearsall. Actually, you have Ricky Pearsall higher than I do, which is shocking. But we both have him mid-20s, and so firmly in this tier. Terry McLaurin, he had 10 points. He looked like he was going to be maybe back, and then he has a quad strain, so I don't know what's going to happen there. Devonta Smith finally has 19 points. Again, the Eagles pass the ball more, but Devonta Smith is just going to be a very consistent wide receiver 2 throughout most of the season. I think that's what he has been every year of his career, including last year when they also didn't pass the ball. And so we'll keep an eye on that with Devonta Smith, but he's somebody that you're still starting every single week. And then we got to go Jacoby Myers here. And Nathan and I still continue to have Jacoby Myers legitimately 15 spots apart. I have Jacoby.
How is that even possible?
I have Jacoby at my as my wide receiver 22. You have him as wide receiver 37. Right now, he's wide receiver 22 through the first 3 weeks. I just am ranking him where he's been every single year forever. So like I think Jacoby is pretty valuable just because I think he's so safe, but he's the last guy in this tier. And then we have some guys that have fallen down our rankings that are going to start in the F tier here we need to talk about.
Yeah, so top of the F tier, we've got T. Higgins at this point. If Jamar Chase is going to be inconsistent, if Chase Brown can't produce, what do we think about T. Higgins? I mean, this is what we think about T. Higgins. It's not great. He'll continue to move down until he can show that he produces. DK Metcalf just doesn't even have the ceiling that we thought he could could in this offense right now. Pittsburgh doesn't look great. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look great. They honestly kind of look like a mess, and DK is just not consistent enough for us to say, oh, he's got the upside that we thought he could have at the moment, so he's going to be in the F tier. Xavier Worthy banged up. What's he going to look like once he comes back? Semi-healthy, because he's going to be wearing a brace. And oh, by the way, Rasheed will be back week 7 as well, so a lot up in the air for Worthy. Deebo Samuel kind of was just with Marcus Mariota. Once Daniels is back, I think he'll be fine. Honestly, he could move up if Terry misses significant time with his quad injury and is continually banged up for the rest of the season. But Michael Pittman has been a big mover for both of us. We both have him as a mid to low end wide receiver 3 rest of the season. I think is very reasonable. I mean, honestly, same amount of, actually more production than Jacoby Myers, for example. That's why I have Pittman over Jacoby Myers. They're both kind of in the same types of offenses, and one of them's producing more than the other right now. DJ Moore had a touchdown, kind of salvaged his day, but again, what's his upside really going to be when Romo Nunze is the top wide receiver there, unquestioned. QJ now belongs in this tier. I think he deserves it. I think Keenan Allen does as well. They're both outproducing Lab McConkey. The fact that we have Lab McConkey a couple of tiers over both of these guys shows you how much we think of Lab McConkey and how talented he is. But I think QJ and Keenan Allen, if they continue this, are just going to move up a tier every single week from here on out.
The G tier here, Jalen Waddle had another promising game on Thursday Night Football. The problem was, again, that mostly came from the touchdown. Without the touchdown, you're talking about him scoring 8 points. He's not going to score touchdowns every week. And so we've seen him kind of on the right side of things. He's a low-end wide receiver 2 right now for fantasy football. But we don't expect him to score touchdowns every week, and if he does, then obviously we'll have a different discussion. But Chris Godwin's going to enter our rankings here. We both have him as a wide receiver 41. Obviously, we're going to temper our expectations with Chris Godwin because he is coming off of a serious injury, and because Emeka Egbuka looks really good there. But right now, I mean, Chris Godwin, do remember, last year he was like the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football through like 2 or 3 weeks. And so, and even through the first 7 weeks when he played, he was still a top 5
6,
wide receiver, top 6,
yeah.
And so, with Godwin, it will, it remains to be seen how big his role is going to be when he does come back this week. But we guess that he's going to have, at least a decent role. Khalil Shakir had a good game against me in the Flock League this week, unfortunately, but 14.5 points for Khalil Shakir, but only 4 targets and he had a touchdown. And so, again, the volume's still not quite there for Khalil Shakir, not quite where we want it. Jordan Addison, we both moved down quite a bit in our rankings. It depends on how long Carson Wentz plays. If Carson Wentz is going to be the starter there for, 5-6 weeks, that changes our outlook on Jordan Addison. But when J.J. McCarthy is the quarterback there, and even with Carson Wentz, who only threw the ball, I think, 20 times in this game,
yeah,
the volume is just not there for a wide receiver 2 like Addison to be productive. I still think he'll score a good amount of touchdowns because that's what he does. But regardless, I mean, we're going to be pretty low on Addison, I think, compared to everybody else. He's coming back this week for the first time. We've obviously talked about him.
I wouldn't be starting him this week until he shows anything. So.
I wouldn't either. Calvin Ridley still hasn't shown anything. Jerry Jeudy had a slower game last week, and so with Jeudy, I mean, you kind of have to temper your expectations with him now as well. 2 points. He's the wide receiver 62 on the year. He's not been over 11 points so far. And Cedric Tillman, actually, I don't know what Tillman did. What his final numbers were. 5 points for Cedric Tillman. So just a pedestrian day for all of those wide receivers, and large part because they played the Green Bay Packers defense, and that's probably to be expected. But Jeudy and Ridley, both veterans that haven't really gotten going yet this year, and so we're going to see if they can get going at some point. But right now, it's not great. Last year.
Yeah, a bunch of guys that you just don't really trust anytime you're forced to flex them. Keon Coleman had a big game. He hasn't really done much since. Juwan Jennings, banged up right now, had a good game before he went down with the injury, but that's all up in the air. Travis Hunter, again, I will ask this question every week. How can we expect Travis Hunter to produce when BTJ can't, even in that offense? Darnell Mooney actually had 11 targets last week, so only hauled in 4 those, so that tells you the type of targets that he's getting, the quality of targets, which are not necessarily high efficiency, like high percentage of catchability targets. Like he's going to be a deep threat that has big playability, or he's not really going to do much. So Josh Downs continues to fall. He's really the third option there in that offense right now. Matthew Golden rises a bit to relevancy, but we still have to see more from him. Trey Tucker finds himself in these rankings because he has just actually the most productive game for wide receivers this week, 40 points. A lot of that was garbage time, but got to show him his respect. Don't expect that every single week. Tillman, Shaheed, Io Manor, and Cooper Kupp will be the last guy in this tier as well. Beyond that, there's nobody that we're really comfortable starting week in and week out.
Let's talk about quarterbacks now. S tier is going to be still Allen and Lamar Jackson here. Both of them continue to be the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks. There's not really a lot to say here. In the A tier, it's going to be Daniels and Hurts, still the next tier of quarterbacks here, and it's not really a ton to talk about either. Daniels, well, I think we expect Daniels back this week. Didn't sound like it was going to be a long-term injury, and so I would expect him back probably.
I hope he's not hobbled.
I hope not either, but we do have to keep an eye. Maybe with a knee injury like that, it could limit his rushing upside, and that is a big thing for Jaden Daniels and his mobility. And so we'll keep an eye on that, but right now we'll keep him where he's at until we see him play on the field again.
So B tier is going to start with Baker Mayfield. He honestly, of all these pocket passers that we have in this range, with potentially the exception of Caleb Williams, he has been like the most consistent non-rushing QB. And actually, look at this. Rushing upside through the first 3 weeks, 39 yards, 33 yards, 44 yards through the first 3 weeks. So that's an extra 3 or 4 points
a game. Yeah.
Which has amounted to 22, 19, and 17 points
That's a big deal
in the first 3 weeks. 17 points against the Jets defense is pretty solid, and that was a slower day for them as an offense. Patrick Mahomes also looking good. Slower day against the Giants, but again, he actually is showing some rushing capability. Drake May obviously has the highest rushing upside of any guy in this offense, but he's the least proven. Caleb Williams has been, I think, the most consistent of any of the QBs in this range. He moves up both of our boards, I think, consistently right now. I've got him at 12. He's moving up. Avery has Caleb at 9. And then Justin Herbert, I do think, has the lowest floor, honestly, of any of these guys. He did throw the ball like crazy this last week, 47 times. He's had a couple of he had like a 15-pointer this last week. But again, with all these wide receivers producing in QJ, Keenan Allen, and Lab McConkey, which we would assume he'll produce at some point as well, like Herbert has been more productive, honestly, than I think either of us expected this season, which merits him being in the B tier.
The streamable QBs here, Justin Fields, we'll hope he comes back from a concussion, see what he does. Bo Nix, not really been good from a fantasy perspective at all. Jared Goff, Goff has been okay. The offense there has been good still outside of week 1, but only 12 points against Baltimore in a game where they scored a lot of points. He only had 12. And so he's the quarterback 10 right now.
Gibbs and Monty day. Gibbs and Monty combined for what, like 50 points?
Yep, and that's what happens when those guys go off. And so, and then Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones had another, more of a modest day this last week, but he continues to be, I think, he's a top 10 player in fantasy right now, the 4th overall QB, the 9th overall player in PPR leagues, 15 points. And so we haven't seen the week 1 production from Daniel Jones again yet, but we'll kind of keep an eye on him and see how much the rushing upside continues to play as a factor there, because he didn't have a rushing touchdown for the first time against Tennessee, and that was, propping up his points a little bit. And so with DJ, though, he is somebody I think that you can plug in and you feel a lot more comfortable in the guys. In the D tier here, like Kyler, Purdy, Love, Dak, Geno, you're really not starting these guys unless you're in Superflex leagues.
Kyler has the highest floor. He's not killing you, but
I guess
he just doesn't have the ceiling that we, again, expect him to have with a guy that you would expect to be a rushing QB, 18, 15, and 14 points.
It's nothing special there. And kind of the same thing, Purdy will come back from injury and maybe come up with these rankings a little bit, just depends on when. Love, Dak, Geno, these guys are all kind of like hit or miss every week, and then the F tier is guys that you're really only using in Superflex league. Jackson Dart.
Kyler should probably be in the C tier. Because his floor is higher than some of these other guys.
Yeah, he could be. He's also, there's no ceiling there as well. He's scoring.
Bo hasn't even shown it.
As bad as Bo has been though. 21 and 13 points in his last 2 games, and Kyler's 15 and 14. So there's really not. Until Kyler does something, I just don't care to. I just don't care to give him any flowers at this point. The F tier is only guys, again, that are going to be relevant in Superflex leagues. But you do have Jackson Dart entering here. Nate wanted him lower. I'm pretty high on Jackson Dart, actually. I think Jackson Dart could be a top 15 QB rest of season. Obviously, we have him here lower than that at 22. Just to be conservative to start off, but I think he actually could be a pretty good fantasy quarterback when it's all said and done. So we'll keep an eye on him in his first start in the NFL, obviously replacing Russell Wilson this week. And then let's go to tight ends.
So at tight ends, Bowers, McBride, Warren all in the S tier. Bowers and Warren had slow weeks this week, but the volume's still there. McBride has been the most consistent by far. A tier going to be a bit smaller. Kraft and Laporta, that hasn't changed. Both of them also had slow weeks. And then just all these guys in the B tier that you trust less. Kittle, Kelsey, Ertz, and Ferguson. Ferguson had a huge week this week. That's why he's up into the B tier. C tier, again, just apply everything I said about the B tier and reinforce that for the C tier, but they're just more untrustworthy. Hawkinson kind of salvages his day with a touchdown, I think in the 4th quarter. David Njoku just kind of has a low floor. Jawan Johnson had another good day. Kyle Pitts was Fannin came back to earth. Goddard had a 10-pointer. Kincaid, 17. Mark Andrews goes off, but that was from touchdowns. We've seen this year after year over the last few seasons. he's not consistent or reliable. And then the D tier, a bunch of guys that you're basically streaming. We will acknowledge Hunter Henry had a great day, 30 points. We're not expecting that every single week. He's a nice streamable option, probably our favorite streamable option in the D tier here, going all the way down to like Cole Kmet.
I mean, I have him ranked as my tight end 14 at this point. I think he's got tight end one upside, which isn't saying much, but it's just a big fat tier there. I think Henry's pretty good rest of the season. So there you go. Our full rest of the rankings for every single position. Again, if you enjoy this type of video, please drop a like. Make sure you're subscribed as well. Subscribing helps us, and it will help you get the information that we put out extremely quick, and also supports the channel. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you here soon.